Dear friends, the sutta for today's sutta is in the numerical discourses, Anguttara Nikaya, in the Book of Fives, number 140. Those who are in the room might want to get out a couple copies of the Anguttara Nikaya if you'd like to read along. Luckily for me, during the everyday morning meeting that we have in our community here, we have a number of resident bhikkhunis and visiting bhikkhunis. And for the morning Dhamma reflection, we take turns asking different members of our Sangha to give their reflection, which is a quotation from some sutta or some teaching of the Buddha. And this means that I get a lot of really fantastic ideas, seeing the different selections that are chosen by my colleagues, especially those who have seriously considered and are reflecting about the same Dhamma themes. So in effect, it's like a web intelligence, is that a thing? A network intelligence. So it's not just my brain, but it's the brain of the whole Sangha that led to this sutta today. It's in the Book of Fives, number 140. And maybe Ramona knows how to find the page number. Okay, here we are. I'm going to jump right into it. There's no detail about the setting. The Buddha starts right in teaching. He says, mendicants, a royal bull elephant with 5 factors is worthy of a king, fit to serve a king, and is considered a factor of kingship. What 5?
Ayya, excuse me. I'm not seeing the screen is black. It says Dhammadharini as part of screen sharing.
I see the same.
Thank you. This is a feature of software, systems display antics.
The connection is not as clear as it is sometimes. We're kind of blipping in and out a bit.
Yes, I'm not sure why my signal seems to be slow and a little bit jerky today, but it is what it is.
Yeah, do you have anybody?
You know, there's much more of a live kind of like an experience, and that's to come over to the monastery and sit with us and be with us in person if you're around.
I will do that soon, but I'm just, do you have anybody in the room there that's also got their computer open?
No.
You may have too many computers going at the same time.
Okay, I see what it is. I'm on the wrong network. Here we go. I'm joining up to the new, which is actually just around outside this room. it provides converts the entire yard and the sitting areas outside into an outdoor internet cafe. Everybody can get a wonderful signal. Okay, so that's
Does that apply to
one
inside
thing.
the room there?
Yes, inside and outside. This thing, somebody looked it up and they told us to buy something for a small amount of money, and it works very well when well, so far so good. It's working. Now I'm going to change the. Well, I'm going to try the sharing again and see what happens. No. Okay.
Ayya, can you say something now?
I'm just.
I think you're on a better network now. It seems like you're matching your voice and the movement.
Yes, I just changed to a better network, and now the screen should.
Perfect. Yes, thank you.
Okay. There's this wonderful camera that somebody gave, but it doesn't, it displays antics. There's a science, I learned this when I took public administration. I possess a master's degree in public administration. And they, in one of the courses I took about management, I had to write a book called Systemantics, which was a very funny book, and one of their slogans was "Systems display antics." It's about unintended side consequences. So this camera is very nice, but it's difficult to understand how it works and what it's doing. So let's come to this sutta. Mendicants, a royal bull elephant with 5 factors is worthy of a king, fit to serve a king, and is considered a factor of kingship. What 5? A royal bull elephant listens, destroys, protects, endures, and goes fast. Already I love this list because it's short. If someone actually wanted to take some teaching of our suttas and really practice it and try to develop all of the factors and elements that were given in a particular sutta, some suttas are so massive that it would take you a year or 7 years to be able to really master and integrate all the different teaching points that are given within that sutta, like the Satipatthana or the Girimananda or some of these other suttas that are very profound and major. But this one is giving 5 factors. You've heard of them before, but just like someone learning to juggle, they might be able to juggle 5 balls. They wouldn't necessarily find it very easy to juggle 10 balls or 12 balls or 42 balls, but we can juggle 5. So I want you to think as we go through, could you develop all of these and keep them all going? How does a royal bull elephant listen? It's when a royal bull elephant pays attention, applies the mind, concentrates wholeheartedly, and actively listens to whatever task the elephant trainer has it do, whether or not it has done it before. That's how a bull elephant listens. And how does a bull elephant destroy? It's when a royal bull elephant in battle destroys elephants with their riders, horses with their riders, chariots and charioteers, and foot soldiers. That's how a royal bull elephant destroys. And how does a royal bull elephant protect? It's when a royal bull elephant in battle protects its forequarters and hindquarters, its forefeet and hind feet, and its head, ears, tusks, trunk, tail, and rider. That's how a royal bull elephant protects. And how does a royal bull elephant endure? It's when a royal bull elephant in battle endures being struck by spears, swords, arrows, and axes. It endures the thunder of the drums, kettle drums, horns, and cymbals. That's how a royal elephant endures. And how does a royal bull elephant go fast? It's when a royal bull elephant swiftly goes in whatever direction the elephant trainer sends it, whether or not it has been there before. That's how a royal bull elephant goes fast. A royal bull elephant with these 5 factors is worthy of a king, fit to serve a king, and is considered a factor of kingship. Now, I invite you to mention the suttas or stories that you can remember about elephants. Can anybody remember any suttas that has something about an elephant?
Elephant's footprint.
Hati Padopama, yes, the elephant's footprint encompasses all the other footprints because it's the largest of all the animals in the forest, right?
And the one where I don't remember if it was Deva Duta, the Buddha's evil cousin, whether it was him or just a Mara thing, but they either gave some kind of a drug or something to a bull elephant. And he set off down, the Buddha's walking down the street and he knows this elephant, what they've done, and the elephant's coming. And the elephant just goes in full charge down the street and he just stops right in front of the Buddha.
Yeah.
That's another one.
Also, the sutta about not keeping company with fools, they say be like a tusker.
Okay, to be solid, if you can't find a worthy companion, be solitary like a tusker. Yeah.
And I believe,
I
this
don't
is Sheila, I believe that I recall a sutta that was an elephant was the focus with regard to the metaphor around our mind and the chain, it being chained, and only its ability to roam and to be in place. And I recall there was a metaphor that was with regard to our mind and training of the mind.
That sutta is called, in English, it's called The Grade of the Tamed. That's a very important sutta. That's the one I was thinking of. When I first read that sutta, it hurt me a lot. It hurt my feelings a lot because it said that the elephant had to forget his ways of the wild forest and the wild jungle, and had to forget about when he was free in order to become tamed. But actually, the comparison is that we can tame our mind. And if our mind is just wild and free like a wild animal, that's not really a happy state of existence. But if we are able to tame the mind, then it's better for our happiness. And the and tying this down to back to our idea for this vasa about practicing for peace. So a wild animal which is not tamed could be prone to all different kinds of conflict. And when that animal comes to be tamed, then it has been pacified. It's able to be peaceful. And so the process of taming the mind is a preliminary practice of becoming more peaceful, and then that goes on into, at the level of our morality, taming our impulses, being more careful, at the level of meditation, learning how to do practices of meditation that involve coming to calm and quiet, letting the breath and the different aspects of mind become tranquil, peaceful and still, and then ultimately having that breakthrough to that breakthrough of wisdom, where the pool of craving is broken, and one is, at that point, one has both the calm stillness and peacefulness and a mind which is tamed, but then at the same time one is free. So you're not experiencing being like on a chain running around a post in order to become tamed, but you're experiencing being free. But the mind is not subjected to any disturbances because the mind has broken the other chains, the chain of desire and ignorance. I see two venerables in the room. I see Bhikkhu Dhammaruchika. Do you have anything more to tell as far as what the significance is of the elephant, what it represents in the Buddhist suttas? You can, if you'd like to speak, you can unmute yourself there.
Yes. Elephant footprints are very big, so that means every animal's footprints you can put into the one's footprint. So the this is the largest footprint. So that means that the Dhamma and we take all together like that.
Yes, thank you so much. So in the hierarchy of animals, the elephant is the leader, just as the noble wheel-turning king is the leader in the secular world, and the Buddha is the leader in their spiritual world. I'd invite, if Seminary Satima, if you can remember anything about elephants.
Actually, Nothing to add at this point. Just very happy to see you and very happy to join.
Okay. Let's continue reading then. Oh dear. In the same way, a mendicant with 5 qualities is worthy of offerings dedicated to the gods, worthy of hospitality, worthy of a religious donation, worthy of veneration with joint palms, and is the supreme field of merit for the world. What 5? A mendicant listens, destroys, protects, endures, and goes fast. And how does a mendicant listen? It's when a mendicant pays attention, applies the mind, concentrates wholeheartedly, and actively listens when the teaching and training proclaimed by a realized one is being taught. That's how a mendicant listens. We may remember that listening to the Dhamma was one of the proximate causes that's given for stream entry. And in several other suttas, that listening, showing up, being present, and listening to the teachers is an essential step in liberation. Even one of our students has spoken movingly about having a personal breakthrough experience while in an alert meditative state, listening to the Dhamma, and because of something about receiving the teachings from an excellent teacher caused the shift, which was the breakthrough to insight. Usually, it's recommended when listening to the Dhamma to come in a respectful kind of a posture, like sitting upright and not slouching and not, fooling around and not falling asleep and not checking one's email or doing something else, some other distraction, but giving one's entire attention to listening, so that listening to a Dhamma teaching is a type, almost like a type of meditation. And reading a sutta or reading any of the verses or the Dhamma teachings also can be taken almost like a kind of a reflection, like a kind of a guided meditation. Could we vow, could we make a resolution to remember not to spend a day without opening a book or going to a teacher or opening a recording of some teaching of the Buddha, and having the suttas be a part of our life, so that like our thought world is the world of the suttas. I heard somebody say that these days a lot of people get involved in, they get very concerned about the news, and they get involved in checking the news not just getting the paper in the morning or in the evening, but throughout the day, checking the news and listening to some kind of like a podcast or a video or a tweet or a Twitter or something like that. So they're hearing different experts discussing the news, and then they're looking at different websites that they like that give them the most up-to-date information and analysis about the news. And so a person could easily spend 5 or 6 hours a day listening to the news. It used to be like when we were younger, the evening news was just like 30 minutes or 1 hour, and reading the paper, didn't really take that long, but one can use up a lot of time. So if it were possible that whatever your favorite distraction is, if every time you thought of listening to the news, instead you would listen to the Dhamma, or if every time you thought of listening to some music or some drama show or some kind of entertainment as a way of relaxation, if instead you would consider using those minutes to listen to the Dhamma. It's a possibility. Okay, there's a question. Avila.
Yeah, my question is, there ever kind of too much Dhamma that can overwhelm the mind in a single day, for example? Like I've heard that sometimes it's nicer to pick one sutta, one teaching. If a person is taking a wide variety of different approaches in a sort of an indiscriminate way, and they're reading a wide variety of different modern teachers with a variety of different ideas, or else even some teachers of the Dhamma are getting involved in disputing about the Dhamma. So they use Dhamma as a means of quarreling to say, these ones are wrong and these ones are right, and this is the right way and that's the wrong way. So I would say it's very common to have a guidance to find one school or one tradition or one style of teaching which is beneficial to you, which you resonate with and which you find fruitful, and in which you have a confidence that the Dhamma they teach is authentic, and then give yourself to that school and really spend time practicing within that kind of teaching. But it doesn't mean that you should not, like too much, like spending 3 hours or 4 hours a day of reading and reflecting and thinking about the Dhamma would be too much Dhamma, that it's danger, you're going to get addicted to the Dhamma or something like that. I don't believe that the true Dhamma is, when it's properly used and properly taught, it's not dangerous. I don't think it's limited in that way. There are some schools which go to an extreme of saying that you should only study within that boundary of the teachings and not go outside of it at all. Like they would say, you should only read Theravada suttas, and you should not listen to any modern teachers, or you should never listen to a Zen teacher or a Tibetan teacher or something like that. You should just only listen to this school. I don't necessarily think that one has to go that far, because sometimes
the contemporary teachings help a person to make the connection between their own personal experience and the ancient teachings. For myself, I'm actually only interested in suttas. I'm not really that much interested in contemporary teachers, except as a sort of like maybe a check-in. But the Dhamma is safe. You shouldn't be afraid that you'll become addicted or harmed or hurt by exposing yourself to the true Dhamma when it's properly taught. Okay.
Ayya, may I say something?
Yes.
I was gonna say something about what you just read, but I just also want to reply really quick to the previous question, because I've also experienced periods in my life when I think I was like addicted to the Dhamma in not a good way. Like I had to have a Dhamma talk playing. And there's also times when I just get too much information and I can't pull anything in. So I feel like there's also a factor of wisdom to figure out, what's the right amount, when's the right amount to. But what I wanted to share was I was listening to a previous sutta study. I think it was just last week that I missed, and it was speaks about the seen as the seen, the heard as the heard, and I appreciated your reflection that it could mean more than just that, because back in the Buddhist time, it was believed, or even today, that all you have to do is see an enlightened person, and that like magically can enlighten you, perhaps, as opposed to like listening actively or being in the presence of a enlightened being. And so I really appreciate this active listening. It reminds me of the seen as the seen, like, not just being there, but like really listening actively.
Thank you, Karina. So having the sutta talks or sutta recitation playing in its background as a background sound while doing other things is not what I had in mind. So I was thinking that the amount of time at which one could put aside other activities and give full attention to attending to some Dhamma teaching. So then there's the opportunity to integrate and synthesize those teachings as you go about daily life, and as well as you go about your pondering and reflecting and gaining a reasonable understanding through thinking, and then testing what's suggested in the suttas against your own experience to try to see whether it's true or not in your own experience, trying to discover within your own experience whether this teaching is true, and then within the stillness of meditation, having an opportunity to observe at a more profound and subtle level the operation of the mind and the human psychology, and being able to notice things even more deeply, to synthesize what one can experience directly with the things that one has heard. But having, the idea, it's said many, many times that people became disillusioned with the household life, or they were disillusioned because some kind of suffering or some kind of disappointment, and then they encountered the Dhamma, or they encountered a teacher, and they had a chance to hear the teachings, and that hearing the teachings was the breakthrough. Some of us have described for ourselves what a significant moment it was the first time that we met a skillful practitioner of the Dhamma and heard about the Four Noble Truths, or heard about these basic teachings. And it was like, oh, I've been wondering all these years, I've been teaching and wondering but this really matches what I've been looking for. So then, if that's ever happened to you, then keep this factor going, don't drop it. Keep that listening. As now we come to the next point. How does a mendicant destroy? It's when a mendicant doesn't tolerate a sensual, malicious, or cruel thought. They don't tolerate any bad, unskillful qualities that have arisen, but give them up. Get rid of them, calm them, eliminate them, and obliterate them. That's how a mendicant destroys. We have seen this same teaching in many other places. In the Girimananda Sutta, it's called seeing impermanence in all the formations, I think, is the point. And from the perspective of modern people who have not encountered the Dhamma, this advice could seem to be excessively brutal and unkind, as a kind of like a harshness towards oneself, to think that just because these sensual, malicious, or cruel thoughts have arisen, that you shouldn't just say, well, it's just because of causes and conditions. I'm not an arhat, so it's normal that these kind of thoughts would come up, and I can just be aware of the arising of those thoughts, and I can be aware that sometimes they arise and sometimes they go away. And a person could take that approach to being mindful of their unwholesome tendencies, of their negative tendencies, and the teachers even think that Americans, I don't know if it's true or not, like to characterize different countries in this way, but they think that Americans are excessively hard on themselves, that they're self-punishing and self-torturing, and they've been taught by our Western culture to have a lot of guilt and remorse, and to do this kind of like excessive self-torture. And so that's not actually the point of it. It's not that we are like identifying with these sensual, malicious, and cruel thoughts and then punishing our own self because of possessing these unskillful, these are unskillful mental kamas, aren't they? Unskillful acts of the mind, of thinking. But it's rather that we are sufficiently detached from our own psychological process to kind of look very objectively and to say, you know, these kind of thoughts are poison for me, and I don't need to keep on consuming that poison. It sometimes takes many months or years to find out how to get rid of a toxic pattern of thought, if it's a habit that somebody's had for a long time because of causes and conditions. Even if you recognize it and give it up for a minute, it could come back again and again. One could easily be, say, triggered by certain things to have those old habits keep raging up again and again. But what this teaching is saying is, actually, don't give up. Keep at it until you find out how to give up and get rid of the kind of thoughts which are a poison to yourself, which are toxic to yourself. and to find out there is a way that those patterns can disappear and not come back. Well, the way is stream entry and the further stages of enlightenment. But the practices that are leading here are the same practices that can cause old patterns to become, we can grow out of them. So I think I'm going to pause here and again see if there's anybody believes or doesn't believe that this is a good idea. Okay, Corina.
I guess I have something else to say. I, 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 I really like the comparison between this and the elephant, and that it compares it to destroying, being hurt or attacked in battle or it compares the sensual thoughts, malicious thoughts with objects, people that hurt you or threaten you in battle. And I hear what you're saying about, that this is not something to hurt ourselves with, and often in this culture we have that. But to me, it actually seems to reflect how well you understand gratification, danger, and escape. Like if you have a little malicious thought, you're like, you might feel justified and you may not see it as that big of a deal. But if you really realize that the danger of it, that it really is a little poison, then it feels the response to it feels normal, as opposed to, oh, it's not really poison. It's just maybe not so healthy. No, this is poison. So it's like really understanding that. Yeah, and sometimes when I was thinking of an example. It's like, let's say I'm late to an event, and I'm like, oh, when did I lose all that time? What happened? And if I look back, I'm like, oh, I was just gonna reorganize my sock drawer really quickly. I'm just, making something up, because I thought I had time and I've been wanting to do it, and then the time slipped away. But when when at the time I was like, oh, reorganizing my sock drawer, that's not very dangerous. That won't take too long. It's just like little thoughts like that, not recognizing that, no, actually that's what made me late. So it's like not having the perception of what is danger, then you won't have the reaction of, hey, I really need to abandon this.
Right. I think it's really common that people can give up 80% of their bad habits, or 90% or 95% of their bad habits, but there's some bad habit that they keep. It's like keeping a pet or something like that. I had one friend who was a Vietnamese lady who had escaped from communist Vietnam, and her family had suffered quite a lot in the war. And she said that she had boundless loving kindness for all living sentient beings in the whole world except the communists. And she could not love the communists because of what they did to her family. See, so she was harboring that one bit of ill will. Likewise, someone might think that it's okay to be kind and considerate towards all beings, but then, like some figures that we read about in the news, they become like a cartoon character, whether it be somebody in the world or some group in the world is qualified as being the enemy, and then we think, because we're not actually face to face with them, and we think there's no harm to just hate on them from a distance. But this teaching is saying, don't think like that. It's not safe. Not safe at all. Ren.
Thank you, Ayya. I was debating whether to talk about this. This morning I went through a pretty traumatic event of just walking my dog, and 2 neighborhood dogs were let out and decided to attack my dog. And I managed to wrangle her. I mean, at one point, 2 points, one of them has its mouth on around Ellie's neck. So I managed to wrangle my dog away. And so luckily there wasn't any major injury. But it was a very traumatic event for me. And so 3 hours later, I was reflecting on this experience. Like, what did I learn from Dharma? You know, what can I learn from this? And I felt that, you know, the doctrine or the idea of non-attachment. So if I felt if I am not attached to the outcome of my dog, then I don't feel the as much of the anxiety. It'll be just helping a weak creature from its, you know, from being bullied. But because I'm so attached, it's traumatic to me. And the owner of the 2 dogs were not as responsive or responsible, makes me upset. And all those emotions, like, what can I learn from this experience? And I was thinking, you know, conceptually, I think I understood enough to say if I had the insight, I would not be attached as much. I wouldn't be suffering, you know, as I was. But without the true insight, just having the conceptual understanding of it, it feels to me, okay, if I don't want to feel the pain, then I just don't love. You know, to not be attached is not to love, and not to, so the emotion is neutral. And instead of feeling comforted by that thought, I just felt even more despair. And it just felt like I'm in this repetitive, poisonous thought, you know, that you're just talking about. Because I feel like if I had true insight, I probably won't feel this way. I probably won't feel trapped about this idea.
What if you loved your own dear dog, and you also loved the other 2 dogs, and you also loved the owner of the other 2 dogs? Wouldn't you still try to wrangle your dog away from them and stop the injury?
Yeah. I will still do exactly the same thing, but the feeling inside will not be the same.
But it doesn't mean that you're cut off from love, because your kindness and your love is extending to the entire situation. Instead of being that you love the one and you hate the other or something like that. I'm not saying that you hate the other dogs, but
No, I don't. Yeah.
here's another wonderful moment that this is from a past discussion that I had with a group, and one fellow said that he completely gives up anger, but then what about righteous indignation? Isn't that all right? And so he did not have the idea that righteous indignation is a kind of aversion. So, but that's like one of the most dangerous kinds, that because you know that the irresponsible owner is wrong, and you're that then because your resentment of them could be justified as being a righteous resentment, that then you think you can allow it, but you shouldn't. According to this teaching, you shouldn't allow that resentment at all, not towards the dogs and not towards the owners. That you should really almost like see the danger and be afraid of like the harm to yourself, the karmic harm to your own self, if you allowed that kind of resentment to have a safe harbor in your own mind.
I just feel the futility a lot about this everyday sort of living. You know, it's like there's always going to be things to worry about. There's always also good things. You know, it's just repetitive, like same thing, like what the Buddha said. And without having the insight, I just felt so tired of needing to deal with this over and over again.
I'm going to say one more thing. Please consciously practice this mind which is free from resentment And to the extent that you do that, give yourself a lot of credit and realize this is not just the same old, just repeating and repeating, but actually this is the upward spiral. That having a moment or having a day in which you're able to rise up out of resentment is, wow, that's so powerful, and it's such a kickstart for your happiness in your life if you're able to experience that. And when you experience it, notice it and give yourself credit. It's a big lift to get there, but it also has a big payoff.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead.
I was say Sharina had her hand raised.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, okay, Sharon, yeah.
My has changed. I'm kind of trying to figure these new icons. But I also wanted to share just some recent realizations. And lately, my life has become so hectic that I've not been able to show up, right, for our meetings. And I'm realizing how important it is to have Kalyana Mittas and how important it is to talk to you and some of the Ayas, because two things that came to my mind as my life got more and more hectic and more exciting. One day I was like, oh my God, like, how am I going to face my death? I'm so attached to all of these things, right? And then the moment passed and I got busy again. But earlier this week, I had met up with a friend for lunch, and my friend is a good Christian woman. And I noticed that I was like griping and complaining about practically everybody in my life. And I did not realize it at that time, but when I got home, I realized how she did not join in with me. And she was kind of trying to come up with reasons and explanations for why things are the way they are. And all of a sudden, like it struck me, first of all, that my speech was so unskillful, but I was like, who has it any different? Like, all of us have the same experience, but not all of us choose to criticize and complain about why people are not the way we want them to be. And I was just recognizing, and I feel like this is like a bad habit that I have carried through many lifetimes because it's so strong and I just enjoy it so much. But I think just having a forum like this to talk about it and to recognize it is really important to just have some kind of movement forward.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you. And I think this teaching is challenging all of us to really take it as a project, not to just go along with these habits, but to find out how to rise above or break through or, in one way or another, escape from these negative habits. I know that sometimes it seems like you can't escape completely, but you can sort of find like a window, like an opening. Like even though you feel a grudge against somebody or negative towards somebody, you can just force yourself to speak very nicely to them and to do nice things for them, and actually intentionally behaving and speaking with kindness is already causing this formation of a grudge or aversion to start breaking up and losing its grip. And it could be that just by the means of like being nice or speaking nicely, that it makes it possible to see the situation in a different way. So it's like the mind and body are connected, and intentions and perceptions and volitions are all interconnected. So if you can change one part of it, then it loosens up the pattern. But it's very much worth doing. And then the day will come that you'll notice it's actually not that complicated, not that cumbersome, not like a horrible heavy lift that you can sort of partway get there to getting out of these bad habits. But you'll discover that when some trigger comes along, that you're capable of just going poof, like you just see it, poof, and then it goes away, disappears completely. It's possible. You can do this. Okay, I'll call on Patipada.
Thank you, Ayya. With that list, listen, destroy, protect, endure. And for going fast, in my practice, I kind of replace that with urgency. To the listening can trigger conditioning and change it. So to be able to listen with compassion and to recognize that we are so blessed and so fortunate to have learned the Dhamma and to have this opportunity to practice the Dhamma and to see how it helps us to shift our thinking. Once we're able to really start with listening and being absolutely in the moment when we listen or when we're having an experience, then what automatically arises with listening is compassion for ourselves and others. The dogs, the owner, to have compassion that, oh my gosh, I'm so fortunate to have this Dhamma and to be able to see this for what it is. My wish is for that other person to also have access to the Dhamma so that they can do the same for themselves. And so that listening with compassion can automatically erase the fear and erase all of the unskillful conditioning that underlies our behaviors and our processing. So for me, with my practice, the listening always has to be intertwined, intimately intertwined with compassion, compassion for self and others. And then it has an impact on changing responses in all of the other things, in all of the other 5.
So true that compassion is the skillful means to effectively be able to wipe out some of those negative habits, or perhaps all of them. I think we could spend another hour or perhaps another month or 2 on the cultivation of compassion, but let's go back and continue with the themes, the points that are given on this sutta. How does a mendicant protect? It's when a mendicant sees a sight with the eyes, they don't get caught up in the features and details. If the faculty of sight were left unrestrained, bad, unskillful qualities of covetousness and displeasure would become overwhelming. For this reason, they practice restraint, protecting the faculty of sight and achieving restraint over it. And similarly, a sound, an odor, a flavor, and a touch, and knowing an idea with the mind, not getting caught up in the features and details. This means that we have looked at our habitual patterns And we may know that if a certain kind of circumstance arises, then we usually are overtaken with some evil tendency. So if someone is a bhikkhu or a bhikkhuni, it could be that when the bell rings for lunch, that the sensual desire for food arises, or that greed arises in them because of like a Pavlovian training that, we start to salivate and the stomach starts to churn just from hearing the lunch bell. So if one, recognizes a typical situation, then you would like prepare yourself in advance, or not to be cogitating and savoring and thinking about the delectable details of the particular situation, or alternatively, thinking about the horrible, unbearable details of something that's aversive to us, but instead finding out that we're able to choose what we pay attention to. And we can pay attention to those features that are supportive of good and skillful qualities arising. So in Patipada's example, if someone has studied about compassion, and then if you notice how another person is suffering or another person is in danger, that could be a trigger for the skillful quality of compassion to arise. And so it's okay to pay attention to those features that are promoting skillful qualities until later on the mind doesn't want to be so activated and just wants to calm down and settle. But if there are certain qualities that are triggering your old bad habits, then take a lot of care in learning how to have a choice whether or not to remain focused on those things that are triggering. This is definitely so strongly developed within the monastic context because we simplify our life and we're not even exposed to a lot of delicious, delectable, enticing, and pleasurable and entertaining pastimes. So in that way, we've simplified our situation in order to avoid becoming overwhelmed with those distractions. And that this could be your choice also, that you could choose to simplify your life and to not participate in things that are too distracting for you. Or it could be that even within a very good and carefully chosen lifestyle, we can see that the mind is still capable of going towards that which is unsatisfactory and chewing and grinding away with a grudge and a complaining mind about it. Or one is capable of the mind being attracted to the things that are delicious and delectable, and having the mind reaching for that, whether in actual sense contacts or whether it be in daydreams or memories, and then getting into that mind drifting along in a pleasant dream state, wasting time. That there's a very active process of learning how to practice restraint with the senses and with how we direct the mind. I'm going to stop again and ask if others we can teach each other how this practice works. Okay, Karina.
This is a little bit of a personal example, but I was just struck by it so much. So sometimes I argue with my partner, and I really think I'm right. And and then let's say we pause, but if I see him again, then my mind instantly comes up. I want to like tell him again why I'm right. So I've sometimes when I find I'm a much better arguer or more rational, or I work much better that even when I'm arguing with him, I don't look at him that much. So it's funny because it's not like it's like a subconscious thing. It's like just the trigger in the eye. I said when I'm arguing, or even after we stop arguing and the mind's starting to calm down, if I see him, if I look, so I like I pick it up again. So I've learned to either the simple act of actually leaving the room, or sometimes I just won't look at him while we're talking about things because it makes me yeah, it's feel like it's a fight too much as opposed to what we're actually discussing. So yeah, just the use of the eyes. I was so surprised by that.
Well, that's a really cool that you're so observant of your own process to be able to notice that. And this is an example of something like a skillful means. It might be that at this particular moment or this year or something that's a good practice, and that at another time when the geography of your own mind and situation has shifted, that's not necessarily always and forever, but just that's the skillful means in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it's an extra 10% help. It's like 10% less of a trigger.
Yeah. Does anybody doubt that restraint of the senses is useful? Okay, Chintana.
To be clear, I'm not doubting that. What I have a question about is how do you, if you fight or rebel against your senses, that makes them stronger, right? That gives them energy, if you will. Resistance is giving something energy. So how do you fight them without giving them more energy? For instance, let's say there's a TV show I want to watch with my daughter, and she watches it all the time. And I end up just sitting there watching it with her instead of doing, reading Dhamma or exercising or something I could be doing.
Well, it may be that the fellowship with your daughter makes it important to watch that show, even though it's not necessarily a Dhammic activity that you yourself want to do, but instead it's part of your being a good parent and having a caring relationship with this person towards whom you have undertaken. I guess your daughter is probably a grown-up by now, but even so, you still have these supportive activities can be good. There's good reasons for that. As far as this other point about like suppressing, like if something is being suppressed, psychologically suppressed to the point that we don't even know what's going on, like we've blocked it out completely, and then at that point our emotions we're reacting, but we don't really even know what we're reacting to because they say that the bad intentions are like a card swindler who hides the trick. And so when the mind is doing something bad, it's very much able to hide the trick so that we're not, especially when the mind is doing something that's against our own morality, it becomes difficult to have us insight into our own process because of that feature. So we fool ourselves. But having samvara, or restraint over the senses, does not mean that we're fooling ourselves or sweeping something under the rug. It rather means that we're able to make choices. In the marshmallow experiment, the little child who was able to wait 5 minutes before taking the marshmallow, you know, they would be playing a game, and they would be like not looking at the marshmallow, and they would be going and doing something else, and you know, they're doing all of these things to avoid the temptation to eat the marshmallow too fast, and that child is doing a kind of like a struggle against their own desire. But that, in the end, that child becomes a happy person and a happy adult because they have the ability to choose what to get involved in and what not to get involved in. But I don't think this is recommending that kind of harsh repression, which is almost like a combination of a self-mortification and also throwing up a lot of delusion in order to avoid facing something.
Well, impulsiveness as a choice sounds rather odd as well.
Yeah, but I think the sutta is saying that it is a choice, that one can choose to give the free rein or give oneself permission to be impulsive.
Thank you. Good. Okay.
Okay, Patipada.
After 34 years of marriage, I would have to say that the meditation practice has taught me the most important thing of my life, and that is one can only process through one's being, which means every individual's being processes subjectively. So when I'm having an interaction with my husband and I see resistance arising, I stop, because I recognize that that resistance is me wanting to hear him say certain words. And I remind myself this is his processing based on his life. And no, we're not going to come up with the same thoughts. So once I'm able to tell myself that, I can be open to receive whatever comes from him, knowing that that is the only thing he can produce. I don't have to agree with it, but I have to accept that that is who he is. And to do anything else is denying his legitimacy of being who he is. So once I was able to process and accept that, there is no need for argument. There is absolutely no need for argument. If I don't agree and something is coming up, stop and observe it. And then say, okay, let me process this for a while, and then let's continue this in a bit. There doesn't have to be an argument.
So this restraint of the senses in terms of controlling that potential reactivity is not only what we pay attention to, but also how we pay attention, how we conceive and what the concept is.
Exactly. The whole process. Exactly.
I'm aware of the time, and I don't know if people need to leave exactly at 2:30, you can, but I think I'd be willing to go over 10 or 15 minutes if possible to finish through these points. And I'd see if Sharanya and then Richard would like to comment briefly about explaining what their understanding is about this restraint of the senses.
So I struggle with it myself. So, but what I actually wanted to do was respond to Chandana and her dilemma about giving in to, let's say, wanting to watch a television show with her daughter rather than exercise or do something dharmic. And my response is perhaps not that different from what you said and what Patipada said. And that is, we have to use our practice of mindfulness to address this. In my understanding, is if we can, instead of focusing on the object, flip it around and notice how it feels to be wanting something or struggling with the choice. Do I sit and watch TV? Or do I go for a walk? And if we can just sit and observe, and if a thought or feelings are too abstract, then to bring our attention to the body and noticing how we feel it in the body. And if we can just stay with the observation, and as we cultivate our mindfulness practice, eventually it'll fade. Eventually, the desire will either lessen or change. And so, in many ways, I don't think you have to struggle with it. I don't think you have to make it go away. You just have to be able to observe it, and the moment will pass. And then you move on to make choices, perhaps based on what's most needed or what is most valued, as opposed to what your first impulse is. So I don't know if that's helpful, but it basically comes down to just mindfulness. And from there, my state of mindfulness, even investigating. A lot of times my mind tells me these things and I get carried away with it. And then after a while, I'm like, oh, that's a lie because I have those conditions now. And it's not that different. My mind is just lying to me about how things would be better if it was different. So it's basically just comes down to mindfulness.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I agree. I'm going to rush right on ahead and hear from Richard.
Thank you, Ayya. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, when Buddha has made his decision that he's going to leave, he has a discussion with Ananda, and he says about several places where he tried to give hints to Ananda, like, you know, he'll talk about a certain place and he'll say, Ananda, remember when we were talking and I said, oh, Rajgaha, this is very delightful here, and he talks about several cities like that, very delightful here. And then finally, at the end, when close to the end, when he's at Vesali, it says he stops and looks at Vesali from a distance with his elephant look, and then he says to Ananda, Ananda, this is the last time the Tathagata will look upon Vesali. And Vesali is one of those places where he says, oh, it's very delightful here. So this idea of like battling the senses is unfortunate, if someone's in that type of condition. What the Buddha is talking about here is a bhiksu does not grasp at its marks and features. It's not that you don't notice maybe something's beautiful or nice or whatever like that, but you don't let your mind grasp on it and think, oh, I must see this again. I must be here again. I must do this again. It's just that's why when seeing, he just sees. But seeing just sees doesn't mean you don't see the difference between, say, beauty or something that's not so beautiful, whatever. It simply means that you don't reach out, you don't keep grasping for it. Because if you do that, then, I'm looking at Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, unwholesome states of longing and dejection is what he says, right? you're going to want it, right? And if you don't get it, you're going to feel bad. Oh, I'm not getting what I want, you see. And so that's you're trying to stay in equilibrium. You're trying to just remain calm. So it's but I know it's difficult to calm the mind down enough to grasp these ideas, and many people feel like they're sort of like battling against their nature or something like that. But it's supposed to be approached in a different way than that. Just understanding the temporary nature of everything, how it eventually end the suffering, because there is no substantial self that can be found there. So self meaning like some permanent thing that can be grasped and held onto. And so it's better to try to always bring the mind to a calm state and not, agitate the mind, because that agitation, that's that longing and dejection, really. It's you might think that you're battling against the thing, but really what you're doing is you're just kind of fueling this longing and dejection. But anyways, that's just my opinion. But thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go on now. How does a mendicant endure? It's when a mendicant endures cold, heat, hunger, and thirst, the touch of flies, mosquitoes, wind, sun, and reptiles, rude and unwelcome criticism, and puts up with physical pain, sharp, severe, acute, unpleasant, disagreeable, and life-threatening. That's how a mendicant endures. So now, in this case, this is very much, we were talking this morning about fear and how a lot of conflict and anger is really just a reaction to fear. This is pointing to an intentional practice of being able to approach unpleasant experiences while sustaining one's inner calm and being able to endure them without being upset or reactive, without feeling you have to get rid of it, without feeling anxious or emotional about it. And it even could be possible that this sort of starts up with things that, like if it's cold outside or if it's hot outside, it's unpleasant. But I don't get like such a resentment because it's cold outside or it's hot that is going to cause real injury to myself. When I was a child, I fell off my bicycle and was, hospitalized. And I could barely remember it. I mean, I remember being in the hospital, but I'm definitely not traumatized by that physical pain of falling off a bicycle. But also, when I was a child, my father criticized me unfairly. And, when I was 25, 30, or 40 years old, I could still weep in the anguish of having been criticized by my father. You see, so this is sort of like a scale of things that are maybe easier to endure to things that are more difficult to endure. So the cold, heat, hunger, thirst, flies and mosquitoes, and reptiles, okay, so those things are actually easier to endure, but rude and unwelcome criticism is hard to endure. And then the pain which is acute and especially life-threatening. So that which is life-threatening is very hard to endure. And so it seems to me that this is suggesting a kind of a progressive training to notice the Vedana, the pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral quality of the different things that one experiences, and intentionally, particularly with things which are painful, to just keep keep our, hang on to our cushion and be willing to stay and be present, or for something which is painful. And it actually is such a liberating thing in a certain way that without having the understanding about Vedana, one could be thinking, fire, 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 or, or that's not so, does that, some kind of like big reaction could be taken over. Or if you start to describe it in terms of, like it's wrong, that person shouldn't be criticizing me or something like that, then that is promoting it. But then if you just say, oh, this is unpleasant, so just know it's unpleasant, well, your work is completed. All you needed to do about the fact of something being unpleasant is simply to acknowledge and know that it's unpleasant, and then it doesn't really require, or it's possible then to be able to just be present. And there's a flip side of this, of also having a detached attitude towards pleasurable experiences. So having that kind of detachment, so that when unpleasant things happen, it's normal. First, it's normal. Second, it's impermanent. Third, it's impersonal. We just happen to be the one who's, catching that experience at that moment. But all of those factors are almost like universal. So that's my idea about enduring. And I'll pause here take just not too many comments, I hope, because I know time is so precious. Richard.
Thank you, Ayya. I just want to make a quick comment on this section that, yes, it's important to patiently endure these things, but one should also strive to avoid them. It's the same, Buddha says, you wear the robe, right? And one of the things you do is you put it over yourself to ward off mosquitoes and gadflies and things like that, right? Or you don't go begging at night because you can fall in a cesspit, or maybe the king's guards will think you're a robber, or, there's all kinds of dangers in the dark. You're wandering around in the dark, right? So I know some people say, and I've even heard a very advanced monastic jhana practitioner describing how in his youth they sat out in the jungle in Thailand, and giant mosquitoes came on their heads and stuff, and whatever part of their body was not covered, and attacked them. And they just sat there, like they're not supposed to move or do anything. But Buddha specifically says, no, use your robe to ward these things off. A person shouldn't go out of their way to search after these things. But if they just happen to happen to you, okay, because of a circumstance or something, then you should patiently endure it and not let it disturb your mind. But the same way, this idea like, well, I'll show how strong and tough I am, let 100 mosquitoes sit on my head and drink my blood all night, it's no big deal. Yes, one could enter maybe deeply into fourth jhana and forget the body and not realize mosquitoes are coming in and biting you or something like that, or gadflies or something. But just like you wouldn't, like it talks about reptiles or serpents here, depending on the translation, you wouldn't let a viper just come in and bite you, purposely. Well, let me see if I can endure this viper's bite, or come in and poison you, and stuff like that. No, it's just if these things happen to transpire, right? And you can't resolve if you get thirsty and there's no water, okay, you just tolerate it. You get hungry and there's no food, okay, you just tolerate it like that. But you don't purposely go out of your way to starve yourself or to go without water. That was Buddha's wrong path that he took, that he rejected, right? Too much austerity, starving himself to death and things like that. Anyways, I don't want to talk too long because yes, we're running out of time, but thank you for listening.
I think you've referred to in the Salbasava Sutta, they talk about those dhammas which are to be developed by enduring and those that are supposed to be developed by avoiding. So falling into a cesspit is an example of one to be avoided. And then unpleasant experiences are to be developed by enduring. I'm going to go right back to the sutta now and read the last of these 5 points. How does a mendicant go fast? It's when a mendicant swiftly goes in the direction they've never gone before in all this long time, that is, the stealing of all activities, the letting go of all attachments, the ending of craving, fading away, cessation, extinguishment. That's how a mendicant goes fast. A mendicant with these 5 qualities is the supreme field of merit for the world. So this is a inspiring finale for this sutta, and also, I think, a reminder to have our eye on the goal and to keep hope alive, and to if we don't really know, if we don't really feel confident that there is a way out, that there is a way to this stealing of all fabrications, that we just patiently keep working until that insight like opens up to us and it becomes more like of a palpable thing. And to practice meditation, because it is within meditation, like don't give up on meditation. It's within meditation that one may experience, sometimes have experiences within meditation that are approaching this kind of stillness, so that one can see that that's a capacity of a human being to go to this ultimate stillness and release. Okay, I'm going to call on Elaine and then Rin.
Just a comment. There's so much less drama with Buddhism, and you don't get the results without practicing. So when you do say meditate and listen to Dharma talks and read sutras, I think the results are directly resulted to how much time you spend with it. So it's not as if you're getting thrown into the deep end and expected to do these amazing feats before you're ready. Thank you so much for your talk. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ren.
Thank you, Ayya. I really, really appreciate this talk. And I think there are 2 points that you really hit the nail on the head on 2 things. One is that I do see that it's an upward spiral, because I think given in the past, given the same situation in the morning, I wouldn't have compassion for the dogs. Even though I had flash of anger towards the owner, I still had compassion for them. So what really got me actually was I was feeling alarmed by my attachment for Ellie, for my dog. And I felt it as like a weakness. And that's the conundrum. So the second point that you're saying that I really appreciate was that through meditation and maybe some insight will break through, and then I would get it, with true insight. My conundrum is that I feel that this is a burden, not a burden, I'm alarmed by my attachment to Ellie. It's only because I'm trying to practice with my current rational understanding of Buddhism versus true insight. So thank you for the encouragement.
You're welcome. And that alarm can be turned in a positive direction. Let that alarm be the base for spiritual urgency to say, I still got some work to do. Let me do the work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ren. Thank you, everybody. I so appreciate your practice and your participation and your loyalty in coming back to these discussions again and again. We can close by paying respects to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed one, I render homage to the Buddha, the blessed one. The teaching so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha.
Thank you, Ayya. It makes us pay attention, and it makes me pay attention in a different way when you read the suttas like this. So thank you very much. Very different than doing it by myself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Be
you.
well, everyone.
It was very helpful.